A billionaire sat alone in a hospital chapel on Christmas Eve, crying, praying to a God she wasn't sure believed in her anymore. She had $4.2 billion in the bank, 3 homes, a yacht she'd never used, art worth more than most people make in a lifetime, and not a single person coming to visit her. Everyone in that hospital had somewhere to be, family waiting, children excited about Santa, someone to hold. Everyone except Eleanor Bradford. She sat in her wheelchair, oxygen tank beside her, hands trembling, watching other patients' families rush past the chapel door without a second glance. Then a little boy walked in. He was maybe 7 years old, worn clothes, shoes with holes, a Christmas sweater that was 2 sizes too big. He sat right next to her, looked at her face, and said 6 words that shattered everything she thought she knew. "Why are you crying, Grandma?" She wasn't his grandma. She'd never seen this child before in her life. But what happened next didn't just change her Christmas. It exposed a secret she'd buried for 40 years. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why the people we ignore might be the ones sent to save us. Before I continue, let me ask you something. What's the point of building an empire if you have no one to leave it to? What's the point of living 78 years if you die without anyone holding your hand? What's the point of being someone if there's nobody left who remembers who you used to be? Eleanor Bradford had everything the world says matters, and nothing that actually does. Stay with me. This story will change how you see everything. Welcome to Story Buddy. While you're here, please hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from tonight. New York? London? Lagos? Toronto? Sydney? And stay until the very end, because what happens in the final minutes will break you and then put you back together. Let me tell you about a Christmas Eve that proved the people we overlook might be angels in disguise. Picture this: December 24th, Boston General Hospital. Snow falling thick and silent outside the windows. Christmas music playing softly from the nurse's station. The smell of pine and antiseptic mixing in the air. The hospital was quieter than usual. Most patients had been discharged to spend the holiday with family. Those who remained had no one coming for them, or they had family who'd forgotten them. Eleanor Bradford sat in the chapel on the 3rd floor. She'd asked the nurse to bring her there an hour ago. Not because she was religious, she hadn't prayed in 40 years, but because the chapel was the only place in this hospital where no one would see her cry. She was 78 years old, silver hair that used to be professionally styled every week now hung limp and thin. Designer hospital gown. Yes, she'd had one custom made, because even dying she couldn't stand looking ordinary. The cancer was everywhere now, started in her lungs, spread to her bones. The doctors spoke in careful words, comfortable, quality time, arrangements. They meant she was dying, probably weeks, maybe days. And Eleanor Bradford, founder of Bradford Industries, one of the wealthiest women in American history, would die alone. Her phone sat in her lap, silent. She'd texted her son Michael that morning. "I'm in the hospital. It's serious this time. Please come." No response. Just like last time, and the time before. Eleanor wiped her eyes with a tissue that cost more than most people's dinner. Silk, monogrammed. Ridiculous. What was the point of silk tissues when there was no one to hand them to you? She looked at the small wooden cross at the front of the chapel. "I know I haven't talked to you in a while," she whispered. "I know I don't deserve anything from you, but please, please don't let me die alone." The chapel door creaked open. Eleanor turned, expecting a nurse. Instead, she saw a little boy. He was small for his age, maybe 7 years old, dark skin, big brown eyes that seemed too old for his face. He wore a Christmas sweater with a reindeer on it, the kind you get at Goodwill, pilled and faded from too many washes. His shoes had holes in them. Eleanor could see his socks through the torn canvas. He walked right up to her, no hesitation, no fear, like he'd been looking for her specifically, and he sat down in the pew beside her wheelchair. "Why are you crying, Grandma?" Eleanor stared at him. "I'm not your grandma, sweetheart." The boy tilted his head. "My mama says everyone old is someone's grandma, even if they forgot." Eleanor felt something crack in her chest. "What's your name?" "Isaiah." "That's a beautiful name. Where's your mama, Isaiah?" "She's working." He pointed vaguely towards the ceiling. "She cleans the floors upstairs. I'm not supposed to leave the break room, but I heard someone crying." He looked at her with such simple concern. "My mama says when someone's crying, you're supposed to sit with them, even if you don't know what to say. She says just being there is enough sometimes." Eleanor felt tears sliding down her cheeks again. "Your mama sounds very wise." "She's the smartest person in the whole world." Isaiah said it like it was obvious fact. "She works really hard, too. 3 jobs. That's a lot, right?" "That's very much," Eleanor whispered. Isaiah studied her face. "Are you sick?" "Yes." "Is that why you're sad?" Eleanor thought about the question. Really thought about it. "I'm sad because I'm alone," she finally said. "I have a son, but he doesn't want to see me." Isaiah's eyes went wide. "Why not?" "Because I wasn't a good mother. I was too busy working. I missed too many things, and now he's angry with me." Isaiah was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that stopped Eleanor's heart. "My daddy was angry at my mama too. He left when I was a baby. Mama says some people don't know how to love right, but that doesn't mean they don't love. It just means they're broken." He looked at Eleanor. "Are you broken, Grandma?" Eleanor couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. A 7-year-old child had just seen her more clearly than anyone had in decades. "Yes," she finally whispered. "I'm very broken." Isaiah nodded, like this made perfect sense. "That's okay. Mama says broken things can still be fixed. It just takes someone who cares enough to try." He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a candy cane, wrapped in plastic, slightly crushed. "I was saving this for later, but I think you need it more than me. Merry Christmas, Grandma." Eleanor took the candy cane with trembling hands. It was worth maybe 15 cents. It was the most valuable gift she'd received in years. Before I continue this story, I want to know, have you ever felt completely alone, even in a room full of people, even surrounded by everything you thought you wanted? Drop a comment and tell me. And if this story is touching you, hit that subscribe button. We're just getting started. The chapel door opened again. A woman stood there, late 30s, dark skin like Isaiah's, tired eyes but kind. She wore a hospital janitor's uniform, gray shirt, gray pants, name tag that read Grace. Isaiah James Williams. Her voice was stern but loving. "I told you to stay in the break room." "But Mama, this grandma was crying. I had to help." Grace's eyes moved to Eleanor. She took in the wheelchair, the oxygen tank, the expensive hospital gown, the tears. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. He knows better than to bother patients." "He didn't bother me." Eleanor's voice cracked. "He saved me." Grace looked confused. Eleanor gestured to the pew beside her. "Please, sit down, just for a moment." Grace hesitated. She looked at her watch. The floors still needed cleaning. She'd already taken too long on her dinner break. Her supervisor would notice. But something in the old woman's eyes made her stay. She sat down. Isaiah climbed into her lap. "What's your name?" Eleanor asked. "Grace. Grace Williams." "That's a beautiful name. How long have you worked here?" 3 years. Grace's voice was cautious, not sure where this was going. "I work nights because the pay is better. My mother watches Isaiah until I get home." 3 jobs, Isaiah told me. Grace's face tightened with something like shame. "Times are hard." "I know about hard times," Eleanor said softly. "I didn't always have money. When I started my business, I worked 20-hour days, missed my children's childhood completely. Told myself it was for them, for their future." She looked at Isaiah snuggled in her mother's arms. "But the truth is, I was running from a marriage that was falling apart, running from a life that felt too small, running from myself." Grace was quiet for a long moment. "My husband left," she finally said, "when Isaiah was 6 months old. Said he wasn't ready to be a father. Hasn't seen his son in 6 years. Eleanor nodded. My husband left too. Emotionally. He stayed in the house, but he was never really there. And neither was I. We lived like ghosts passing through the same hallways. Isaiah looked up at his mother. Mama, can we stay with Grandma for a little while? She's alone and it's Christmas. Grace looked at Eleanor. Eleanor looked at Grace. 2 women, generations apart, worlds apart, but connected by something deeper than circumstance. Loneliness recognized loneliness. I have nowhere to be, Grace said quietly. My shift is over in an hour. We could sit with you until then. Eleanor felt tears threatening again. I would like that very much. They talked for the next hour. Grace told Eleanor about her life, growing up in Roxbury, meeting Isaiah's father in high school, the dreams she'd had of becoming a nurse before life got in the way. I was in nursing school, Grace said, 2 years in, top of my class. Then I got pregnant and Marcus left and everything fell apart. What happened to nursing school? Grace shrugged. Can't go to school when you're working 3 jobs and raising a baby alone. The dream didn't die, it just got postponed, maybe forever. Eleanor listened, really listened, the way she hadn't listened to anyone in years. And Isaiah? He's everything. Grace's face softened as she looked at her son. He's the reason I get up every morning, the reason I keep going when I want to give up. He's my heart walking around outside my body. Isaiah had fallen asleep in his mother's lap, his small hand clutching the hem of her uniform. Eleanor watched them together, the tenderness, the connection, the love that radiated between them like light. She thought about Michael, her son, the boy she'd left with nannies while she built her empire, the teenager who'd begged her to come to his baseball games, the young man who'd eventually stopped asking. The last time she'd seen him was 5 years ago, at his father's funeral. They'd stood on opposite sides of the grave, hadn't spoken. She'd sent money for his birthday every year, expensive gifts for Christmas, a down payment on his first house. He'd never cashed the checks, never acknowledged the gifts. Eventually, he'd changed his phone number. I was a terrible mother, Eleanor said suddenly. The words felt like glass in her throat. I told myself I was building something for Michael, creating a legacy. But the truth is, I didn't know how to love him. She looked at Grace. My mother didn't know how to love me either. She was cold, distant, critical. I swore I'd be different with my own child. And were you? Eleanor shook her head. I was worse. At least my mother was present. I wasn't even there. Grace was quiet for a moment. Have you told him that? What? Your son. Have you told him you're sorry, that you know you failed him? I've tried. Eleanor's voice broke. He won't take my calls, won't respond to my letters. He's so angry. Anger is just hurt wearing armor, Grace said it gently. My father was angry at my grandmother for years, wouldn't speak to her. Then she got sick, really sick, and he realized he was running out of time to heal. What happened? He went to see her. They talked, cried, forgave each other. She died 3 months later, but they'd made peace. Grace squeezed Eleanor's hand. It's not too late. As long as you're breathing, it's never too late. Grace's shift ended at 11 p.m. She gathered Isaiah in her arms, careful not to wake him. Will you be okay? She asked Eleanor. I think so, for the first time in a long time. Grace hesitated at the door. I work again tomorrow night, same shift. Would it be okay if we came to visit you? Eleanor felt her heart swell. I would love that. Grace smiled, a real smile, the kind that transformed her whole face. Merry Christmas, Mrs. Bradford. Eleanor blinked. You know who I am? Grace nodded. I've seen your picture in magazines, read about your company. You're famous. Then why did you stay? Why didn't you ask for anything? Grace looked at her with something like pity, but gentle, kind. Because you're a person, not a bank account. And because my son saw you crying. He doesn't know about billionaires. He just knows about people who need help. She shifted Isaiah's weight in her arms. Besides, my mama taught me that the measure of a person isn't what they have, it's how they treat the people who have nothing. After Grace left, Eleanor sat alone in the chapel. But for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. She looked at the candy cane Isaiah had given her, still clutched in her hand. And she did something she hadn't done in 40 years. She prayed. Not for herself, not for healing, not for more time. She prayed for Grace and Isaiah, for their struggles, for their dreams, for the father they'd abandoned. And then she prayed for Michael, her son, the child she'd failed. Please, she whispered, give me a chance to make it right. The next morning was Christmas Day. Eleanor awoke to find a nurse standing beside her bed. Mrs. Bradford, you have visitors. Visitors? Eleanor's heart raced. Michael? The nurse smiled mysteriously. Just a moment. The door opened. Grace and Isaiah walked in. Isaiah was carrying a paper plate covered in tin foil. We made you Christmas breakfast, he announced proudly. Well, my grandma made it, but I helped stir. Grace was embarrassed. I hope this is okay, Isaiah insisted. Eleanor felt her heart swell. This is more than okay. This is wonderful. They sat together while Eleanor ate scrambled eggs and slightly burnt toast that was somehow the most delicious meal she'd had in years. Isaiah told her about his Christmas presents, a used bicycle his grandmother had found at a yard sale, and a new drawing pad from his mother. I draw really good, he informed Eleanor seriously. Want me to draw you a picture? I would love that. While Isaiah drew, Grace and Eleanor talked quietly. I've been thinking, Eleanor said, about what you told me, about nursing school. Grace's face closed off slightly. Mrs. Bradford. Please, call me Eleanor. Eleanor, I appreciate whatever you're thinking, but I can't accept charity. It's not charity, Eleanor leaned forward. It's an investment. In you, in your future, in Isaiah's future. I don't understand. Eleanor took a breath. I'm dying, Grace. The doctors give me weeks, maybe days, and I've spent the last 6 years thinking about everything I did wrong, all the money I made that doesn't mean anything now, all the people I could have helped but didn't because I was too focused on building more. She reached for Grace's hand. You have a gift. I saw it last night. The way you listened, the way you cared, the way you saw me as a person instead of a paycheck. The medical field needs people like you. Grace's eyes were wet. Let me pay for your nursing school, all of it, and childcare for Isaiah while you're in class, whatever you need. Why? Grace whispered. You don't owe me anything. No, but I owe myself the chance to do something right, just once, before I go. Isaiah looked up from his drawing. Mama, are you crying? Grace wiped her eyes. Happy tears, baby. Isaiah nodded seriously. Grandma Eleanor made you happy. He smiled at Eleanor. See? I told you broken things can be fixed. That afternoon, Eleanor asked the nurse to help her make a phone call. She called her lawyer first, made some changes to her will, changes that would have been unthinkable a week ago. Then she called Michael. The phone rang and rang and rang. Voicemail. Michael, it's your mother. I know you don't want to hear from me. I know I have no right to ask anything of you. But I'm dying. Really dying this time, and I need to tell you some things before I go. Please, please call me back. She hung up and waited. The days passed slowly in the hospital. Grace and Isaiah visited every night after her shift. They brought food, drew pictures, read stories aloud when Eleanor was too weak to talk. Eleanor told Grace about her life, the real version, not the magazine covers and business profiles, the truth. She told her about growing up poor in South Boston, about her father who drank and her mother who worked herself to death. I started my first business at 19, a cleaning service, just me and a bucket and sheer determination. 10 years later, I had 200 employees. 20 years after that, I had an empire. But you weren't happy. Eleanor shook her head. I was too scared to be happy. Happiness felt like dangerous, like something that could be taken away. So I kept chasing more money, more success, more proof that I wasn't that poor girl from South Boston. What about your husband, Michael's father? Robert was a good man, patient, kind. He tried to love me, but I didn't know how to let him. I kept him at arm's length for 30 years. She closed her eyes. He died thinking I didn't love him, but I did. I just didn't know how to show it. Grace squeezed Eleanor's hand. Tell me about Michael when he was little. Eleanor smiled despite herself. He was such a curious child, always asking questions. Why is the sky blue? Where do birds go when it rains? He wanted to understand everything. The smile faded. I missed so much. His first steps, his first words. I was always somewhere else, building something that seemed so important at the time. And now? Now I'd give every penny I have for one more day with him, one more chance to say I'm sorry. A week passed. Eleanor was getting weaker. The doctors increased her medication. The pain was constant now. But every night, Grace and Isaiah came. They were her family, the family she'd never built with blood, the family that had found her when she needed them most. On New Year's Eve, Isaiah presented her with a special drawing. He'd been working on it all week. Grace said he'd refuse to show anyone until it was perfect. Eleanor unwrapped it carefully. It was a picture of 3 stick figures holding hands, one tall, Grace, one small, Isaiah, and one in a wheelchair with silver hair, Eleanor. Above them, Isaiah had written in careful letters, "Our family." Below that, "Grandma Eleanor is not alone anymore." Eleanor held the drawing to her chest and wept. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for seeing me, for choosing me." "You were easy to choose," Isaiah said it simply, like it was obvious. "You needed us, and we needed you. That's what family is." Grace was crying too. "He's right," she said. "You've changed our lives, Eleanor. Before I met you, I'd given up my dreams. Now I'm enrolled in nursing school, starting in January." Eleanor had made sure of it. Full scholarship, child care stipend, monthly living allowance. Everything Grace needed. Not charity, investment. "That's wonderful," Eleanor said weakly. "I'm so proud of you." The door opened. A nurse stood there, face carefully neutral. "Mrs. Bradford, there's someone here to see you. He says he's your son." Eleanor stopped breathing. "Michael?" The man who walked through the door was 52 years old. He had Eleanor's eyes, sharp, intelligent, but where hers had softened with age and illness, his were hard, guarded. He stopped just inside the room, looked at his mother, at Grace and Isaiah, at the drawings covering the walls. "Who are these people?" His voice was cold. "This is Grace and her son Isaiah." Eleanor's voice was shaking. They're my friends. Friends. Michael's laugh was bitter. You don't have friends, Mother. You have employees and investments. Michael, I got your message. All 17 of them. He crossed his arms. You're dying. You want to make peace. Is that the story? It's the truth. Michael looked at her, really looked at her, and Eleanor saw something she hadn't expected. Pain. Deep, old, unhealed pain. Do you remember my 10th birthday? He asked quietly. Eleanor's heart clenched. You promised you'd be there. Promised we'd go to the baseball game together. I waited by the door for hours. You never came. I was in a meeting. A merger. It was important. More important than me. It was always more important than me. Michael's voice cracked. I used to think if I was better, smarter, more successful, maybe then you'd notice me. Maybe then you'd choose me over the company. He shook his head. But you never did. Even when my dad was dying, you were on a conference call when he took his last breath. I know. Eleanor's tears fell freely now. I know what I did, what I failed to do. And I'm sorry. I'm so deeply, desperately sorry. Sorry doesn't give me back my childhood. Sorry doesn't... Michael? Isaiah's little voice cut through the tension. Everyone turned to look at him. The little boy stood up from his chair, walked over to Michael, looked up at him. Your mama is sad. She cries every night. She talks about you all the time, how smart you were, how much she wishes she'd been there. Michael stared at this child he'd never met. Who are you? I'm Isaiah. I'm 7. My daddy left too. He didn't know how to love right, but that doesn't mean he didn't love. Isaiah took Michael's hand. Your mama is broken, but broken things can be fixed. It just takes someone who cares enough to try. He looked back at Eleanor. She's trying. I can tell. Can't you try too? The room was silent. Michael looked at his mother, at this dying woman who'd failed him in every way that mattered. And then he looked at Isaiah, at Grace, at the drawings on the walls, at the candy cane wrapper Eleanor had saved, at all the evidence of love and connection that had somehow grown in this hospital room. His shoulders dropped. You really changed? I'm trying to. Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper. For the first time in my life, I'm really trying. Michael was quiet for a long moment, and then he did something Eleanor never expected. He crossed the room, sat on the edge of her bed, and took her hand. I don't forgive you. Not yet. He met her eyes. But I'm willing to try. Eleanor squeezed his hand. That's all I ask. The next 2 weeks were the best of Eleanor's life. Michael came every day, sometimes for an hour, sometimes for 5 minutes. But he came. They talked about everything. The pain, the anger, the years of silence, the regret on both sides. I should have answered your calls, Michael admitted one evening. I was so angry I couldn't see past it. But anger is exhausting and lonely. Eleanor nodded. I know. I was angry at my own mother for 30 years. She died before I could forgive her. I didn't want that to happen to us. It almost did. But it didn't. Grace and Isaiah kept visiting too. Michael and Grace became friends. Their children. Michael had 2 daughters who flew in from California, played with Isaiah in the hospital corridors. The room that had been so empty was now full. Full of laughter, full of tears, full of healing, full of family. Eleanor died on January 19th. Peacefully, surrounded by everyone she loved. Her last words were to Isaiah. Thank you for seeing me.
The funeral was held at a small church in South Boston, not the grand cathedral her status would have warranted. A simple service, just family, real family, blood and chosen. Michael gave the eulogy. My mother was not a perfect person. She made mistakes, big ones. She missed my childhood. She wasn't there when I needed her most. He paused. But in the last few weeks of her life, she changed. She learned what really mattered. She found a family in the most unexpected place, a janitor and her son who showed her that love isn't about money or status. It's about showing up, about seeing people, about sitting with someone when they're crying even if you don't know what to say. He looked at the congregation. Don't wait until you're dying to learn this lesson. The people in your life right now, see them, choose them, love them, because money can't hold your hand. Success can't sit with you when you're crying. Only people can do that. And the people who do, they're your real wealth. 5 years later, Grace Williams stood at a podium in the Bradford Foundation's new headquarters. She wore scrubs, had just come from her shift in the hospital, senior pediatric nurse now, top of her unit. Today, we celebrate the 5th anniversary of the Eleanor Bradford Foundation. Grace's voice was strong, confident, the voice of a woman who'd found her purpose. In 5 years, we've funded 3,000 scholarships, built 15 family housing complexes, helped 10,000 single mothers pursue their dreams. She paused. But numbers don't tell the real story. The real story is a little boy who saw a crying woman and decided to help. The real story is a billionaire who learned that family isn't about blood. It's about choice. Grace looked at Isaiah, 12 years old now, tall, handsome, sitting in the front row next to Michael and his daughters. My son taught Eleanor Bradford that broken things can be fixed, and Eleanor taught me that it's never too late to become who you were meant to be. She touched the portrait behind her. Every day I think about what would have happened if Isaiah had stayed in that break room like I told him, if he'd ignored the crying, if he'd decided it wasn't his problem. Eleanor would have died alone, bitter, broken, and I would still be cleaning floors, dreaming about a future I was too afraid to chase. Grace smiled. But Isaiah didn't ignore her. He saw someone in pain and he chose to help. That choice changed everything. She looked out at the audience. So today, I'm asking you the same question Eleanor asked herself in that chapel. Who have you been walking past? Who have you been ignoring because they seem different, unimportant, not your problem? Because here's what I've learned. The person you overlook might be the one who changes your life. The stranger who seems like nothing might be carrying everything you need. And the broken person crying alone might just be waiting for someone brave enough to sit beside them and say, "Why are you crying?" Grace stepped back from the podium. The audience rose to their feet. Applause thundered through the hall. And in the front row, Isaiah smiled. He was thinking about a Christmas Eve 6 years ago, a dark chapel, a crying woman, a candy cane that cost 15 cents. He was thinking about how one small choice had rippled outward, changed lives, built families, created legacies. He was thinking about Grandma Eleanor, and he knew wherever she wasn't alone anymore. None of them were. And that's the story I wanted to share with you today, friends. A billionaire who had everything and nothing. A janitor who had nothing and everything. A little boy who knew that broken things can be fixed. And the Christmas Eve that brought them together. If this story touched your heart, drop a comment and tell me why. Have you ever helped a stranger and had it change everything? Have you ever been the person crying alone, waiting for someone to see you? Subscribe to Story Buddy and hit that notification bell. We tell stories about the moments that change lives, the people we almost miss, the love that saves us when we least expect it. Where are you watching from tonight? New York? London? Lagos? Sydney? Toronto? Let me know in the comments. Wherever you are, I'm glad you're here. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone who feels invisible, someone who's forgotten that their presence matters. Because it does. It always does. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness, a candy cane, a question, a moment of sitting beside someone, creates ripples that change the whole world. That's what Isaiah taught Eleanor. That's what Eleanor taught Grace. And that's what I hope this story teaches you. Until next time, Story Buddy fam, and remember, the person you ignore today might be carrying the gift that saves your life. Never stop seeing people. Never stop choosing love. Never believe that broken things can be fixed.